A new report has found that just 14 properties across the entire country were available to rent within HAP housing assistance payments limits last month, highlighting the growing gap between rent supports and real market prices. These findings come from the Simon Community's latest Locked Out of the Market report, which is warning that more and more people are being pushed out of the private rental sector. Joining us now to discuss is the CEO of Midwest Simon, Niall Garvey. Niall, thanks very much for being with us.
Good morning, Alan. I'm sorry to have to follow such a good news story with gloomy one like this, but we need to talk about it.
We do. Don't worry, we won't shoot the messenger. But that's a stark figure, Niall. 14 properties available under HAP across the entire country, 16 areas, which is an incredibly low number, and I would assume quite unusual, or is it?
Yeah, as you say, only 14, and actually 11 of those are in Dublin, so 3 in the rest of the country. This is a report that we have been doing in Simon for a number of years now on a quarterly basis, and once upon a time we used to come and talk about decreases in the availability in particular areas, but now so many areas have zero. You can't go lower than zero. So we tend to look at urban areas. So take Limerick, there are no HAP properties available in Limerick City or County. We don't examine Clare specifically, but I have had a look myself just at the figures in Clare, and it's the same situation. I suppose maybe just to explain to your listeners, HAP, the Housing Assistance Payment, is a top-up paid by the state for people who need housing and can't avail of social housing immediately, and it was supposed to provide access to the private rental market, and the scheme has been in place for I think 13 years now, and it worked once upon a time. So over 1,000 people in Clare, for example, are availing of the assistance at the moment. So it's helping those people, but the problem is it's not working anymore for new entrants. So if you look, and any of your listeners can, and some will be very well aware, if you look on Daft, which is probably the main platform this morning, you will see 6 rental properties available in Ennis. The smallest and the cheapest of those is a 1-bedroom apartment for €1,650 per month. The HAP scheme funding for that only goes to €360.
Okay, so it's the HAP limits are well off actual market rents. Aside from that, are there other shortcomings of HAP?
No, HAP works well when there's availability, but the prices the funding available to the local authorities, it's set by the Department of Housing, but the funding available needs to be increased. There was an independent review of the scheme done in June 25. The report was issued, so we're coming up on a year later. And that had a large number of recommendations, many of them on admin efficiencies and easing the application process and so on, which are all very valid. But the one that struck me at the time, the main recommendation was that the funding needs to be increased so that people can actually access what's available. And here we are a year later, and there was no change in that. And that's an easy one to implement. And it does. I don't like talking. We all know we have a housing shortage in the country, and this is a reflection of that. And I always hate talking about houses where we're trying to say somebody deserves one more than somebody else, because we all deserve a roof over our heads. So it's kind of why should a private property be more available to somebody who needs assistance than somebody else? But what I always come back to on this is the research that shows that when people enter homelessness, it's very difficult to get out of it, and it has complications, health, financial, all of that, and it has costs. So it does actually make sense for society and the state and all of us to prevent people becoming homeless, and HAP is a way of doing that. And it's particularly important at the moment, I think, because we are seeing an increase in notices to quit being issued for existing tenants. So I was having a look there on the figures this morning. We only have to the end of last year. But if you take Q4 last year compared to Q4 the year before, the notices to quit are up 40% in a year, which is staggering. So they're all people who will need alternative accommodation. And the majority of those notices were where landlords were intending to sell the property. So that property is no longer available to another renter. So HAP is critical to just put a kind of a floor on this, and it's not working.
But there is a review of HAP limits underway, and I guess you would be calling for those limits to be raised as a matter of urgency. And even if that happened, Niall, would increasing HAP limits be enough, or are more fundamental changes needed?
Well, look, we need more houses is the short answer, more homes. But in the interim, increasing the HAP funding certainly would help. It would help the people who need it most, I suppose, which is what this is about. And yes, the review is underway, but it's been underway for a year now. I think it includes a lot of changes, but the simple one of just index linking the HAP payments to the market rents could be introduced immediately and would have, I think, an immediate impact.
What are you hearing from people on the ground in Clare and around the Midwest in general who are trying to find accommodation? I mean, for those who can't find a property within HAP limits, they must really worry about the risk of homelessness increasing, and particularly for families, is it difficult for them to compete in the current rental market?
It's difficult for everybody, Alan, single people to families. And that's a change that we've seen over the last few years. Midwest Climate Community, we've been around for almost 20 years now, and when we started, there was a very particular type of person who became homeless in general. I mean, there are always exceptions, but it tended to be middle-aged, single people, often male. Now that has changed completely. It's families, it's people of all ages, it's older people who are retiring and don't own their own property and can't pay market rent out of the state pension. That's relatively new, but it's one of the largest increases. And families as well, and people who are working. And I suppose that's a big change. If we went back 10 years ago, people who were working, could afford somewhere to live. And while salaries have increased reasonably well across the country over the years, and the minimum wage has increased, I know a lot of people would say not enough, but it has increased. But the problem is none of those have kept pace with the cost of renting or buying a home, if you could even find one to rent or buy.
Okay, well, we're sorry you had to follow the news about the great weather, Niall, but as I say, it's important to get this out there and just discuss it. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Alan.